So namaste and welcome to Satsang today. And Satsang is an event like this where we look at the truth of who we really are. But Satsang really is also our life when we look at it, right? Where we might see a deeper truth in this kind of event where we gather together. But then our life becomes the real Satsang. It always has been, where we're given plenty of opportunities to apply what we're understanding, where we're moving towards living from in our life. So it's a good idea not to do what I did, which was to try to separate. And this is my spiritual life, and this is the rest of my life. That didn't work out so well. So just avoiding that, realizing that our life really is, the purpose of it, the highest purpose is to live as this truth that we are seeing. And the truth is that there's only one being, there's only one substance from which all forms, phenomena are made, from the most visible, tangible forms like bodies and planets and trees, to the most subtle forms like thoughts and emotions, and even subtle little life force energy. It's all made of this same one formlessness, the basic substrate from which the whole universe is appearing inside. And even our sense of a separate someone is just another appearance inside this, that you are. You are this. Whatever this is, there's only one of us. And you're appearing as this body that's talking, and all these bodies here, and everything. From the tiniest speck of dust or subatomic particle to the universe as a whole, that's your form. And that is what you are. And so Satsang is really for the deepening of seeing that that is true, rather than thinking about it or believing. By the time we find ourselves in Satsang, in any teaching, we're already beyond the point where believing in something or having faith in something is going to satisfy us. We want the direct experience of our own emptiness, our own intangibility. And once we've begun to experience that, we're going to want to live like that. And life then is going to ask us to examine our old beliefs, our life will show us where those beliefs are, and apply what we have seen to be true. Can we be unsafe and unlovable and limited if actually what we are is this formless emptiness that the whole universe is appearing in? And the recognition of who we are and living like that might seem very far away. In our experience right now, it may seem just like an idea. But the actual way to bring it into a lived experience is to bring it into our living experience. Our life is either going to reflect our sense of separateness or our deep and rich recognition of our unity and our wholeness, the oneness of all life. And so with that in mind, I wanted to talk about something that's come up again and again and again this week from various people. And it was fundamental to me to begin to understand this on a deeper level. And that is our karmic patterns are, well, we talked about some of them already, this sense of not feeling safe, not feeling loved or lovable, feeling very limited, blocked, restricted. Wherever there's a negative emotion in our life, there's a story waiting to be investigated. And what I see over and over again in students, and it was like this for me, is that my life had begun to improve and change as I started to see who I was. Slowly and gradually, as I saw clearer who I already am, the formless reality of the infinite being, the one being, and then saw clearer who I am not. I'm not this separate being that doesn't feel good enough and never feels like it's going to wake up to the truth and all of that stuff. And that was getting applied in more and more areas of my life because gradually we're less and less able to live from anything other than the truth. And like everyone else I come across in my own journey, there was there was two areas of my life where no matter what I did, these karmic patterns were still playing in my life. So in my finances, which were an absolute train wreck, and in some of my relationships. Everywhere else, it was starting to clear up. And my life was starting to reflect the abundance of seeing that I'd had over and over again. And if you just think about your life right now and just notice, is there one sticky area where no matter what you do, when that person says that particular thing, or there's an absence of something you think you need, or whatever it is that seems to trigger it, that even this far down the path, it's still not changing, right? There's one sticky area, maybe two or three. Everything else has begun to resolve, even if it's only a work in progress right now. What is that sticky area of your life where you still just don't feel good enough, or you don't feel safe, or you feel blocked, or whatever the karmic pattern is that's coming up? And I wanted to look at that because for me, there was a lot of judgment about why that pattern was still there, why it was still going on, even though I'd done all this work and had managed to improve some other areas of my life. And the truth was living itself as my life. And I still couldn't turn my finances around. And what most of us do is, like I did, when this experience changes, then I will be good enough. When I can finally resolve this karmic pattern and my whole life is reflecting the truth rather than the illusion, then I will then finally be good enough. And that's an impossible loop to get out of because we're waiting for our outer experience to change before we feel good enough inside. But this thing going on outside is reflection of us not feeling good enough inside. It's a mirror image because the inside and the outside, the world of experience, the outside, and the inside, the thoughts and emotions are one and the same thing, showing up different ways. So the thoughts about an experience, the emotion we feel, and the experience itself are all the same thing. Our mind says, I'm thinking about this experience as if they're actually separate. They never are, they're one and the same. And each of us will have a particular area where it just seems to be that it will never resolve. Never. So maybe it's our body that's been sick for a long time and just will not seem to heal. Maybe it's our finances that have been sick. Maybe there's some dis-ease in our relationships, our career, our spiritual capacity for spiritual practice. It doesn't really matter what it is, but a lot of beings have this one area or two that are just like, it's just impossible, it feels like. And if you look at the things you tell yourself about that situation, why it still hasn't cleared up yet, it usually comes back to some kind of self-blame or self-judgment, right? If this thing was fixed in my life, I would be good enough. I would be awakened enough. I would be free enough. I would be, our whole sense of self-esteem is based hanging upon this one karmic pattern that's still lingering in this one area. And what it took me a very long time to realize is that that karmic pattern is going to go on for as long as it needs to and not a second more. So it's there as a teacher. It's not there as a punishment, right? It's not there still because we're not good enough. It's there because it's got something else to show us. And this one karmic pattern for me with total financial insecurity stayed right until the last tiny bit of illusion had gone. So it stayed and it showed me all these layers upon itself. From the first realization that having more money isn't going to make me feel better inside. It has to be the other way around. And then it showed me that there isn't a separate being to actually accumulate anything. And then when I thought it would go, it didn't. And it stayed to show me that there isn't such a thing as money, actually. It's all the infinite self. And then it stayed to show me that there can't be any lack in my experience if I am infinite. If I am the source of everything, there can be no lack in my experience. And every stage along these layers of seeings, the deepening my own realization, I was sure that this thing should have gone by now. Finally, I stopped blaming myself for this and began to realize it must have something else to show me. And that process took a long time and a lot of suffering because I was so sure that it should have gone by now. And the last thing it showed me, this financial challenge, disaster, whatever it was that it would not go away until I decided to love myself now, while it was still here, accept myself. That just because some part of my life I haven't actually been able to allow the truth to flow through that particular area is not a good enough reason not to love myself. And that was the hardest one to get. Because I, like everyone else, conditioned by life that I should judge myself based on my outer circumstances and my achievements. And my mind wanted to make this awakening an achievement, right? When I can see the truth, then I'll be good enough. And once I'd seen the truth, then it upgraded that. Once I can live as the truth in all areas of my life, then I'll be good enough. And so if there's something going on for you still, you know, that really stubborn karmic pattern that you just cannot seem to shift, what is your narrative about that? What is the reason it's still there that your mind tells you? And is that true? What if it is a spiritual teacher come to show you something about yourself that you do not necessarily want to see? What if, just like a spiritual teacher in human form, it's not going to go away until you don't need it anymore? What if it's actually going to push you all the way to total liberation? What if it's the most reliable friend you could have, actually, even though you don't want this friend? What if it's there to actually show you that total liberation is your birthright and what you came here for? For me, that was a fundamental shift. That this is not still here because I'm doing something wrong. I'm not contemplating enough or meditating correctly or whatever mind is saying, right, I'm not doing enough practice, I'm not good enough, don't deserve awakening, don't deserve abundance, whatever's going on inside our own self. What if you set it up this way somehow, actually, before this incarnation, to make sure that you reach total freedom and that you wouldn't be able to take your foot off the gas until you had actually literally seen everything you needed to see? And for me, that was a very different reason why something was still going on inside. And it brought with it a lot of self-love and acceptance. Because, time and time again, when I'm talking to people, all I hear is the one area of their life where they still can't seem to apply this fully. And everywhere else in their life where things have really started to change and they're really living from a richer place inside, is forgotten in that moment. How far we've come, how many imagined lifetimes to get to this point. And yet we're still hanging our whole self-esteem on this one little area that we can't quite seem to budge. And it might not be little, it might be huge because we're so focused on it. It's like planting all these seeds in a garden and watering and fertilizing them, right? And looking after them. And every day giving them care and love, and all of them are sprouting and starting to grow into beautiful flowers. And there's just one in the corner of the garden that hasn't yet sprouted. And we have this rich tapestry of color and the smell and the aroma of these beautiful flowers and this amazing thing that we've created. And yet we can't even enjoy it because we're so focused on this one that hasn't actually sprouted yet. And when it hasn't poked its head through the soil, we're saying, see, I'm no good as a gardener because this one here, this last one isn't growing through yet. And we're all doing that. And the spiritual teacher is going, but yeah, look at the garden. Look at all this stuff that you've managed to do. You've plowed the soil and you've planted the seeds and you've done the work and it's all coming up. And yet you're judging your whole sense of self based on this one little thing. Do you want to keep doing that? So, of course you don't, but all of this is just to say maybe you can tell yourself a different narrative next time you run out of money again, or next time you have a fight with your partner, or next time you get passed over for a promotion at work that you really do deserve and you've been there longer and you have the skills. Or next time you forget to meditate, or whatever it is, right? Maybe there's a whole handful of those things. If you're not quite as far ahead as applying this as some of the other body minds here, it doesn't matter. The reason is still the same. What if you didn't even set yourself up to fail in this lifetime? What if it's totally the opposite? Could you be like epically wrong about why this is still going on in your life? Because there's a whole world of freedom in asking, what has this still got to show me? As opposed to, what am I doing wrong? Why is this still happening? There's a, why is this still happening? And there's a, why is this happening still? One's coming from the mind, a separate sense of self, and one's coming from the infinite self. There must be another layer to this onion, right? That's all you can really conclude from the fact that something's still there. What if that was your go-to thought after the same thing gets triggered again, the same relationship challenge, or you have a day where your body just really does not feel good again? No problem has ever been solved from the level of consciousness from which it was created. It's going to take a step up to self-love, isn't it? To allow this stuff to dissolve completely. And most of us are still trying to criticize ourselves and think that's somehow going to work to remove this stuff. Has it worked for you yet? If you think of all the times you've been critical of yourself, has it brought you happiness and freedom? permanent, effortless, stable joy and bliss and peace? What if it was all just this one thing? What if it came down to, what am I doing with these triggers? What am I saying to myself when they happen? What if that's the only thing that needs to shift? Because an awakened being isn't one who's cleared all of their stuff or has all of their seedlings in blossom. Awakened being is a person who's peaceful while they still aren't sprouting, or while some of them are getting caught up in the weeds a little bit. It's very different. Awakening is available now if we're not telling stories about why something is happening. And I wanted to bring this forward because this is the major story I hear everyone telling themselves and telling me. What if that problem that just will not go away is the greatest teacher? Showing up in a very unwanted and unwelcome form, but nonetheless a teacher for us, if we're willing to learn from it, to listen. And it might just be there just to teach us that we are already lovable and complete, that no external circumstance of apparent lack or abundance is going to define anything different about you or me or anyone. So there's an invitation here in this to check what story you're telling yourself about what's going on in your life and to let it go. Or to let it go as often as you can, bit by bit, just moving away from self-criticism as a way of trying to motivate yourself. It doesn't work. It's disempowering. So if telling bad stories about ourselves actually worked to actually help us wake up, we'd all be awake, wouldn't we? Perhaps it's time to choose something else. So hope that was helpful. It's been coming up again and again this week. And it really was the worst part of my awakening, the last bit of suffering that went on forever. So I'm going to read, I've got 3 questions here I'm going to read that have been sent in. If you can't make a satsang live and you want to ask something, you can send it in using the form on the website, helenhamilton.org /satsang. And there's links on there you can go to. Or if you can make it but don't want to ask it live on the class, or you'd rather it be anonymous, just you can use also the same thing. I'm going to read these 3 and then I'll take some questions here live. You've got one hand up already. I'll take up to 4 here online tonight. So first question here says, Dear Helen, I often have profound moments of recognition and insight in the morning, right before I'm fully awake. It seems that I am awake and lucid, but have yet to fully identify with the body. This morning I had the distinct experience that sensations and thoughts floated through with such a lack of resistance that I felt transparent. This is, I assume, an after the fact explanation by my mind. The rest of the day, I was deeply relaxed and felt like my body was there. It was just sort of invisible in a way, completely undisturbable and untouchable. I have actually had this experience before, and each subsequent time, the effects linger for longer. I guess I just wonder if being fully awake feels a bit like this. Could awakeness simply be a deep and profound lack of resistance? Deeply grateful for your teachings. Yeah, a deep and profound lack of resistance. Even a lack of resistance to our resistance. even a lack of resistance to the fact that we really do not like something that's happening in our life. An inability to be inauthentic. If we're angry, we're angry. If we're resisting, we're resisting. If we're scared, we're scared. If we're peaceful, we're peaceful. So this lack of resistance, I love the way you've put this, a deep and profound lack of resistance. That is it, right? Just being what you are in this moment, or being with what is, same thing. And most of all, like I was saying earlier, not telling stories about why anything is happening. In truth, you don't know why something is happening. Mind has 64,000 stories about why any particular event is happening in our life, or any emotions coming up, or any thoughts are happening. What if you were totally able to just let mind speak? If we're not pushing it against it even slightly, the mind, it would just float on through like you've described here. A little thought goes past it, says, I'm not good enough. And then another one goes past it, says, you're doing this all wrong. And then the next one says, you're getting this. And then another one says, I'm just watching these thoughts. And still the awareness that you are just watches all of that. And as you said so rightly here, it lingers longer each and every time. Because every time you practice just being with what is, which is all spiritual practice really is, you're a little bit less able to go back to resisting something afterwards, telling stories about it. We go back to telling stories, but it's a little less comfortable. And finally, when it's totally uncomfortable, we just end up being with what is. What if the mind was just another object in the room and it was just telling stories about nobody in particular? What if it was just a voice floating through the awareness? Why do we feel we need to listen to it? Because then whether you're in that quiet space right before the mind fully kicks in the morning, or whether it's fully doing its thing and really having at it, it doesn't actually matter then, right? It's the same experience all the time. You never come out of spiritual practice the way you go in. You cannot come out of authentic practice, meditation, inquiry, contemplation, whatever, the same way that you started it. You're changed. A little less able to believe thoughts every single time. You just do that consistently enough, and what you described here becomes your constant experience. And then it becomes effortless. Then it becomes really peaceful. Then it becomes really joyful, and on it goes. So wonderful. Okay, I'll read this second one. Dear Helen, thank you for your words of wisdom and comforting voice. I believe in a previous satsang, you said that when you see illness or sickness in another, it is also in you, that it is you. How do I move beyond seeing to knowing the truth? Sorry, how do I move beyond to seeing and knowing the truth? It seems especially difficult when it's a family member who seems to be struggling. And do I or other family members transfer our own stuff to someone else? With great love and thanks. So if there isn't anyone else, there's lots of bodies, lots of human bodies, but only one being inhabiting them all forms, then there can be no transference, because that would mean, we'd need at least two beings for that. How to know that someone else is you, or that sickness isn't just another way that you're appearing. For me, it came down to seeing directly, experiencing directly who I actually am. I aren't a person. I aren't a thing. I am insubstantial and formless, invisible. And when I looked, I didn't find any, there's an edge to my body. There's an end. My body's this big and this wide and this tall. Not very tall, but that's another story, maybe next lifetime. But my beingness itself, it's not a thing. It doesn't have anywhere it stops. Only things have edges. Only objects, only phenomena have edges. And when I tried to find where I stop, I couldn't find an edge to it, not up or down or northeast, southwest. And I also couldn't find a point where I began, because beginnings are for forms, where forms become manifest and then sink back into unmanifest. So no starting and no ending. What is it that is looking through your eyes? Is it a thing? What's hearing these words right now through your ears? Is that a thing? Is it an object? It's only an object can have a size and a shape. The real self, which is not an object, it's sizeless, isn't it? It's not big or small. It doesn't have any particular place it's in. It's not here or there. Again, those would apply to objects. So as I looked like this and proved to myself again and again that I'm not at all what I thought I was, it began to become obvious that I've been thinking about this other body as someone else, but it's really not true. That actually everything I'm experiencing is my own self in disguise. We've just been thinking about it too much, right? And we give it labels and names, sickness and health and money and trees and human bodies and thoughts. And we experience the labels we're giving things more than the actual thing itself. So to come to know, to see, and to be is to question, firstly, this idea that you're a separate person, an object, a subtle someone living inside a body. And then to really investigate what that means if you're not that. If you and I were sat in a room together, our bodies, where would my formlessness stop and yours start? Wouldn't there just be one formlessness? But you can't divide something that's intangible. The space here between my hands, how would I divide it? It's intangible, right? I can't slice it or pull it apart. Can you do that with objects? So questioning this assumption that this is someone else in front of you and actually trying to find where you stop and they start. There's two bodies, but the idea there's two beings there is not true, right? As you look like this. So hope that helps. So last one, thanks Helen. In the recent Satsang in Spanish, these problems are no ones. In the first question, they asked you, your answer talks about what can hinder one. What are you talking about? The mind? And then what happens to the script that is already written? The general plan is not made to the millimeter and cannot be modified. That's a question, sorry. Can anything about what happens in this dream depend on you and me? Thank you so much. So what if the script is written by you? Like the whole script of all of this is written by you. My destiny, your destiny, everyone's destiny. The destiny of a lizard and an amoeba and a speck of dust and a carrier bag blowing around in the wind. It's all written by you. And what if that destiny that you wrote for everyone has an infinite number of possibilities in each moment? What if every possible outcome in every moment is included in that great plan? And well, we think we're a separate being. We're just kind of skimming along the bottom of what's possible to experience. We're just picking the same thing over and over again by default, the same experience based on our beliefs. And once awakening starts to occur, when you start to realize who you are, the possibility, you go from experiencing the lowest, same old stuff, you know, my life and the cyclic stuff that goes on as a separate self, to beginning to be able to experience the higher outcomes. So abundance and freedom and synchronicities and miracles and bliss and joy and peace. And it starts to go like this. Separate being has to go like this, lifetime after lifetime. Awakened being, it's like this. So it's really same thing at the start. And then as you start to transcend this idea of separation, it's literally infinite. But all of those infinite possibilities of what you can experience in this moment have been there right from the start. We just never knew. It's all written into the script. Whether you call it God's will, divine plan, your will, because you are that, right? Whoever sent this question in. Can anything about what happens in this dream depend on you or me? Absolutely. We're free in any moment to choose to experience reality rather than to experience a thought about reality. That's the only free will we have, and yet it is more than enough. In any moment, our experience is either one of illusion or one of truth, reality. And every time you choose reality, you get an upgrade to what you can actually experience in this moment, and then another upgrade. And each upgrade is bigger than the previous one. You choose to experience the thought about reality because we never would choose that. It's just a habit. You get the same range of possibilities. Very, very slowly expanding. 150, 200 years, different bodies coming and going. So the script is written by you. And as you keep choosing to experience what is true, the worst thing that you could have experienced in the next moment has disappeared from possibility. And the best thing has suddenly been upgraded. So well worth doing the spiritual practice. Okay, so we'll go to Cindy first when you're ready.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can. Yep. Wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you. Wonderful to talk to you. All of that has been amazing so far. I wrote in about a month ago. I wasn't able to attend the satsang, and you did respond. I was having a very difficult time with the deep paralyzing depression, and I didn't want to do anything. I don't know if you recall that. I just really wanted to sit in front of the TV and watch the TV. Then about a week late, so I listened to your response to my letter, and thank you for that so much. Had a little difficulty so I re-listened to it multiple times. However, about a week later, I think it's April 29th, you did this amazing meditation called Focusing on What's Real, where you just focus on the space.
Mm-hmm.
And it absolutely has been a game changer. I did hear you, I asked you a question in another conference at another time. And I remember you talking about that, and it just blew me away. And I've been doing it now for about a month. And during the day, if an upsetting thought or an upsetting situation or sensation, I literally during the day, I'm just like, I just went to the grocery store before coming and signing on here. And I'm really practicing. I do it better with my eyes open anyway, just during your meditation for some reason. But I just during the day, just randomly all during the day, I'm just focusing on the space. And I remember you talking about another time, and maybe it kind of refers to what the person said earlier about being in the space of non-resistance. I remember you using the word in our spiritual journey, maybe the first level is just not suffering.
Yeah.
That I'm not maybe experiencing bliss and joy and happiness and all of that, but I definitely feel like the space of non-suffering when I focus on it, and I'm almost becoming addicted to focusing on the space because it feels so good. I have a couple questions. Of course, I do self-inquiries, dissolving the ego. I love all of your tools and pointers. When I have an upsetting thought or a sensation or something, I focus on it. Or even during the meditation, sometimes something might come up and I just allow it, and I focus. Just doing that, will it dissolve those blocks, or some people call them samskari? I don't know. Will it do that? Will it just in time? Because later in your meditation, you say, the more I do, the more, and it's just becoming mind-blowing. I just, that my life will just automatically start to rearrange itself. So is that all I need to do when I have an upsetting thought, when I have an upsetting sensation? Just stop, focus on the space. I'm sorry, I kind of went on.
Okay, it's okay. Yeah, if you can do that, and as you then do that, right? Go to the space, see the space. And for me, it started to become clear that there's an emotion inside the body, there's a body, and then there's this space that I can focus on, the space around the objects. It just became clear that space doesn't really end where the body starts. This space must be right where the emotion is, appearing as this emotion, this body. It just gets clearer over time. As you probably notice something shifting already. If in that moment when something's coming up, you can't seem to find the space right at that point, then sometimes some gentle questioning of what the emotion is, the contemplation is useful in that moment. So most times I could find that spaciousness, and I was walking around, with my eyes open, and really just being aware of the contextual field, that infinite spaciousness that just is, right? It's my real nature. And some fear or some shame or something would come up, and I just couldn't seem to find it in that moment. So I would have to then question the idea behind the fear or the shame. Fear was telling me I'm not safe. It was the panic button. That even that questioning then took me back into that same open spaciousness. It's just another way in, isn't it? So if you can stay as the spaciousness, great. If you can't, maybe a little questioning in that moment, as soon as you realize, as soon as the body tells you, right, when you're believing something again, it starts to get all tangled up and contracted.
So the more I focus on that space, will my experience just continue to deepen and deepen and deepen? Because this is the easy, I've done a gazillion, like most of us probably on this, we've been doing this for a gazillion years, probably done every meditation known to mankind out there. And this is like mind-blowingly just amazing. So
Because it
if
is
I just
normal, right? It is what is already here. And for me, that was fundamental. I would hear teachers say, the truth is right here, it's everywhere. But once I found an actual way to notice it's right here, like it's not some profound silence, it's the very next silence I'm going to hear between these words. That's it. So just noticing that silence or that spaciousness, whichever way in we find, or just noticing that I'm aware of this emotion that's coming up. Just to bring attention back to that again and again and again, something's going to really begin to shift profoundly. You begin to fall in love with it, right? You can see some love affair, some obsession going on, and it's the best love affair ever. It's totally okay to fall in love with that. And it just gradually begins to pervade your whole waking state. It moves from being something I'm doing as a formal meditation to just something I'm living as more and more. And at some point, you just forget how to focus on an object. Your eyes are looking at objects, but your awareness isn't contracting around them like it used to, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm experiencing in this last month. So just continue, allow it to deepen, and it will. Thank you so much.
Most of
I
all,
love
listening to that voice inside that says this is, I mean, yeah, it's good to check with a teacher, but you know already, right? This is going to take me all the way to full freedom. That you can feel it, right? There's something that's obsessed with it. It's suddenly like urgently important. So just like really trusting that impulse inside.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm feeling. It's just I'm getting addicted to it. It's just mind-blowing. So thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful sharing. Thank you. We'll go to Lean. Hi.
Yeah, I just changed the camera here. Yeah. Hi, Helen. Thank you so much.
Hi.
It was quite recognizable, in fact, what you said in the beginning also. In fact, I have a question, a specific one, but I also just wanted to say this, that yeah, that's like, that there's more clarity about who I am not, and that there's a lot of areas that are quite okay, and there's calm. And then when you said that, like, there's one sticky area, and I just wonder, for me, it doesn't feel like an area like, like money or relationship, but it feels more like this sense of not being good enough.
Yeah.
Uh, this is more like where I feel that things keep coming back, like, and it shows in daily life, more like in a judgment coming, and a feeling of shame of not being good enough. Um, and in fact, my question is also a little bit related to that. That I and also I thought it was interesting that you said, like, to shift the perspective, like if this is really your teacher.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought it was because then I thought, like, yeah, if this is my teacher, then, well, what came up to me is, and then it's really trying to teach me really deeply about what is love. That's what it felt like.
And you can't resist it then the same way, right? It suddenly shifts how you're holding it. The fact that it's still here, this unworthiness, despite all of our attempts to get rid of it, it's still here. Usually, we've got some negative narrative going on about why it's still here.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at it as a teacher, it's like you can't help but love it a bit more or a lot more, because its whole reason for existence is to help us, then, not to hinder us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's a huge shift, isn't it?
mm-hmm.
Simple shifting way of looking at it, but revolutionary in your awakening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed, it can. Yeah, it's a different way of looking at it. But I also wonder, like, sometimes when this happens, I noticed that, for example, yesterday evening something happened, and I was in a kind of debate saying something, and there was somebody who was judging, and then I felt a lot of shame. I didn't react to it. I just tried to feel the shame, tried to give it some space and look at the. Um, but sometimes, for example, it also happens that there is a judgment coming, and then, or like, there's also sometimes just a kind of argument or something, and I don't know, like, I also wonder sometimes. I also often notice that I just often don't feel like holding on to anything anymore, in the sense of, like, I could, like, sometimes I can't. Like yesterday evening, it was a bit difficult, but often it just feels like I just feel love for this person. I don't want to start going into discussions or talk about it, or um, and it's just like, why would I bother with anything like this? In fact,
Too lazy in the end, right? Too lazy to get
yeah.
involved with illusion. Can't be bothered.
Yeah, it feels a bit like that. But then afterwards, I wonder a little bit, because then I very quickly say, "Yeah, I just love you," and but then I'm wondering, like, often people also say you have to stand up for yourself, or but then indeed, I wonder if I'm just a bit too lazy or too easy, or is that? Well, I think the answer is that
You
it's okay.
can, if you're saying I love you just to bring the argument to an end, or to um in a self-negating way, instead of standing up for yourself, that will immediately start to feel worse in the body.
I,
If it's just like, oh, I love you, it's all fine, from the infinite self, it will feel expansive, it will feel more open.
mm,
So your body's always going to tell you whether you're being truthful in that moment. I love you, but you really irritate me when you say this, or something like that. It would feel actually empowering in the body if you were to say it, because it's true. It feels true. If we say, oh, don't worry about it, it's all fine, but really inside we're seething, it won't feel true when we say it. And the body will tell you, is this just the real self speaking here, or am I just trying to avoid looking at this and dealing with it?
Yeah, that's very clear indeed. Because in fact, at these moments that I did that, then it did feel very good. It just felt like I don't care about, like, it's just not important.
Yeah, yeah. And the body will never lie to you about that, right? That's what it's there for. It will always point out to you when you're being inauthentic, even when we don't want it to. You know, it will never lie to you. So it's always there for guidance, right? That like that. And more and more, you'll just feel I'm just kind of hovering above the mind, and I can't really bother to get involved in it. I'd have to go right down there, and then I'd have to come back up again, and it's just too much effort. I'd rather just kind of cruise along here, you know.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, you're already experiencing it to a large extent. It'll just get easier and easier.
Okay, great, thank you. And I just have one specific question also. It's just about also the last period of time, about last week. There was just some experiences. So on the one hand, last time I sometimes felt quite tired, and the muscles were aching a bit, and there were changes in temperature in the body, like sometimes very warm, and also involuntary movements sometimes, and so more a bit heavier, like a bit of tiredness, and but then also there were some moments where suddenly, like out of the blue, it felt there was suddenly like a surge or something, like, or it was like this, like a deep happiness, or like a deep feeling of love, but so much love. Like, for example, recently I was in the supermarket, but just going grocery shopping, and there was just like so much love coming up, and I just felt like hugging the people standing there in the supermarket.
I'm laughing because I remember that myself, right? And you realize, oh, people are probably not going to understand, you know, so I'll just feel it inside. Yeah. I mean, it's cost us so much life force energy to believe in being a separate being. So as we're coming out of that and you know, feeling like we're not good enough, etc., that's totally opposite to what's actually true. And it takes so much energy to believe that, although we don't realize until we start to come out of it. And when we start to come out of it, the life force has been trapped in this belief. A belief is just a thought that's given a lot of energy and attention because it seems very true. That energy starts to come back and it will surge up through the body, through the chakra system. Where it hits a block, the body might twitch a bit or cry or laugh, or you might feel a little bit of an ache or a pain. And you can feel it's just where the energy, the fast moving life force is hitting some slower frequency, a little bit of self-doubt or a little bit of fear or something like that. So it's very normal. We've been functioning on like 5% of the life force that's available in any particular moment, maybe 1% sometimes, because all of our energy has been put into sustaining this idea of a someone for so long, we don't realize what it's been costing. If you've been paying something every month for your whole life, you don't know any different, do you? It's only when suddenly you've got that money there, you go, wow, this is a lot of money I've got free here. It's like I've been spending this every month on this thing. And it's the same with our life force. Suddenly we've got all this free energy liberated. And you can feel it comes up as love and peace and a sense that everyone is lovable and everyone is your own self. There's a deep recognition there.
But then that's also why the muscles are aching, or this tiredness. That's when the energy is like coming to
Being
stop.
very tight. This idea that I'm a separate being and I'm going to die at some point is terrifying. We've all done everything we can to avoid it. We've been in fight or flight mode, literally in emergency mode our whole life. So when we finally start to be able to let go, the body goes, oh. So it's a combination of the muscles actually starting to realize just how tired they are, and this energy moving faster, hitting these slower frequencies as we're clearing stuff out. So some yoga asanas, some stretching, some laughter, whatever you can do to laugh. It's very therapeutic for the body. Anything just to help the body move. It knows what to do anyway, but just understanding we might feel quite tired for a little while afterwards. a few aches and pains and things. We've been like this our whole life. We just didn't notice it because we've been like that right from our very first memory, you know, like just waiting for something to happen.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ask your question to feel your energy. Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you. We'll go to Joni.
Hi,
Hi, Joni.
I didn't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah, so I've been going through lots of resistance and lots of what you said earlier about areas where things aren't going well for you. Mine's in health for sure.
Mhm.
And I've noticed for the last 10 years, it's kind of been ramping up until this humdinger that I've just had recently. And I just feel I'm not being let off the hook without looking into this. I just have that feeling, and I've learned so much from it, especially with my contemplation question.
Mhm.
Is it true that I need to suffer? And so I will fully recover from this accident, but I've been very lucky. And I'm just going to take it pretty seriously, in quotes, this time. And it's just made me much keener to be very passionate about awakening. And one thing, there's been a lot of sorrow coming out, but I think that's understandable. My physio said that's normal.
Mhm.
And I felt really great when she said that, because I thought, I let myself off the hook. You know, like you were just saying about this stiff position, fight or flight. Yeah, I've had a lot of that going on in my life. And yeah, and you said to Jess a little while ago, and she said that she was anxious and things, and she got, and what was all that? And I think you said something about it's coming out. Because when I get into this sadness, I think I just need to do nothing.
Yeah.
And then I realized when I heard you say that this is what needs to happen. I just need to be with it. And then what I did was I balanced it by really putting my vibe up, by listening to you, listening to things that really raise your vibration. And it's been quite shocking for me to notice my narratives.
Mhm.
And like I had a real, well, I suppose it was a good day yesterday, but it felt awful. That
A good day spiritually and a terrible actual day. Yeah.
Yeah, narrative was constantly going, and I was watching it. I mean, I was a bit involved in it, you know, when I think to myself, I'm just going to watch this with curiosity and with no judgment. But then I forget. It goes. It's like something just wipe that one away. You're gonna
You
feel
still get to choose your narrative about that. Okay, you decide today I'm just going to watch these. I'm just going to watch from the self, right?
Yeah.
And you find at some point you're dragged back in, attention goes to that story. Still, you have control over what story you tell yourself about that. So I identified with the mind for a while. So what? Right? It didn't actually mean anything unless I say it did. I wanted to say just as the awareness, but couldn't quite seem to manage it. So, right? So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
still get to choose, don't you? You still get to choose what you're going to tell yourself about what happened.
Yeah. I like that.
Mind will say by default, because it's factory settings, still, you know, right from installation, it says shouldn't have happened. You should have been able to stay as the self. But you can either agree with that or you can choose your own version of that, which is it would have been nice if I could have stayed peaceful all day, but I got involved in the mind, and that's all that happened. That's all I can really say. Attention went to a lot of thoughts, and my body got contracted for a little while, and there was some emotion happening, and that's the end of my story.
I really liked your introduction, and especially the bit about self-love, because I've been realizing lately that I really beat up on myself, like we all do, but really beat up on myself. And one thing that's kind of on my mind is my competitiveness, and it's like I'm so ashamed of it in a kind of.
Why are you ashamed of it?
Because it's nasty.
Did you
So
choose? Did you choose it?
I can't stop myself from being competitive.
Then do you have then any justification? If something's happening and you have no control over it, and I totally get it, I was like the most competitive person in the world. I wasn't just going to wake up to the truth. I was going to be the best damn awakened being that ever.
Me too. Me
I was going
too.
to glow in the dark and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. But you cannot beat yourself up over something that's just there. You don't have any control over it.
Yeah.
If you had control and chose not to change it, then maybe you could criticize yourself. But again, maybe it's there to teach you self-acceptance. This is just how I'm showing up right now. I would like to be less competitive, but I'm not going to use it as a reason to tell myself unkind things.
Mm.
That competitiveness for me, I turned it inwards in a positive way because it was comparing constantly to other beings, imagined other beings. And I turned it like, where is this going to be useful, actually? Is there a place where in my spiritual journey where it's a useful thing to have? Because when I just let it go and compete against other beings, it just emphasized a division that wasn't really there, and I felt terrible. So where is this going to be a positive thing? And again, it turned into a competitiveness to go deeper each day, a gentle. That was great today, but can I experience even more peace tomorrow? Competitiveness in a very much softer way, not trying to get somewhere, just deeper and deeper and deeper into what's already here. But can you just allow it, invite it to come inside and to ask, where would this be a good thing?
Oh, I like
Because
that.
it's obviously supposed to be there because it's in you as you, and the divine doesn't make any mistakes. We've been pushing it away, saying this is not a good trait, I don't want it. Maybe we just haven't found how to use it properly yet, to the best way.
I think it's a passion. I'm really one-pointed, incredibly one-pointed.
Exactly.
I've always been one-pointed, but now for awakening, I'm so focused on it.
Can you still be ashamed of it now?
No, not. I like that.
So
I like that because its passion's different than competitiveness.
yeah, same thing. When I reject it, I call it competitiveness. When I accept it, I call it passion, but it's the same thing.
How is it the same?
When I'm rejecting it, it will feel bad because I'm rejecting it. It'll feel like a thing I do not want.
Yeah.
When I'm accepting it, it'll feel like something I really do want, and it'll feel good.
Yeah.
Same basic substance, but when I'm doing this, it feels terrible. When I'm doing this, it feels great.
Mm.
And I'm doing this, it's useless, and I use it as a way to criticize myself, and it causes all kinds of mischief. When I'm doing this, it's a way to love myself, and it's really, really, really useful. That one pointed focus. I'm going to stay with this long enough to fully realize it. That's all.
God, I really let go then.
Good, good.
And I did feel a lot of love for the compassion, and it's kind of come to the fore now, and the competitive things move backwards.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Everything I was trying to get rid of about myself, I realized it was supposed to be there. Eventually, I realized I am the way I am for a reason. Maybe I just haven't found where to put that trait yet for the best advantage. Like in this, I need a capacity to be extraordinarily direct. It's great here to break through illusion. When I use it at my family dinner table, not so good, right? All kinds of mischief. So I was trying to get rid of that, and I realized actually I just haven't found where to use it.
Yeah.
Self-acceptance, self-love, whatever you want to call that.
Well, I'm glad I mentioned this competitive thing now, because it just came up. It wasn't what I was going to talk about. And yeah, it's just turned it on its head, flipped it.
Wonderful.
So much. And for a lot of people, it's school, isn't it? You know, it's separation, big subject.
If you just stop rejecting everything you're trying to get rid of about yourself, and this goes for everyone, right now, if you stop trying to get rid of what you think you need to get rid of, and ask where it would be a useful trait for awakening, the whole life will turn around very quickly.
I can see that. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So last but not least, Chris, thanks for waiting.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Wow. Well, I was going to ask you about how you look at trauma in terms of like the psychological description of trauma out there right now. It just seems like such a big deal. And so I'm 56, and I kind of would say I woke up to my true nature about 5 years ago in a hospital. I stopped thinking and then kind of woke up to consciousness, and I've kind of been in a pseudo state like that since, and pursuing it and kind of bouncing around to different trying to understand what the heck happened to me.
Yeah.
Um, so but I've had a long kind of lifetime of being in myself, in my head, in my own description of who I thought I was, which I see as just thoughts. And so I would say I also had some what you would say traumatic experiences over many years, sustained, extreme, repetitive.
Yeah.
So now I feel like, do I have to just work on that? Is that like the biggest thing is that the biggest rock to take off the hill? Or how do you see that? It's just another phenomena that needs to be looked at in the light of present conscious open being, and let it dissolve and let it go?
If you can just watch it from what's real about you, you can see that everything we've gone through as a apparent separate being, a person, and that all the trauma that we've experienced is wrapped up in that idea of a someone. And staying in what's true, that pure consciousness, that awareness, whatever you want to call it, the real self, it's evidently clear, or clearer and clearer, that was not true. It felt extraordinarily real and true at the time, but it's never been who I am, that person that went through all of this. And it's not a negation there of what we've suffered. It's just a statement of fact that I was suffering only from the stories I was telling myself about what was going on, rather than the actual event. Most of us, though, we need some kind of practicing deepening to see who we actually are. So self-inquiry, meditation, and also some practice in undoing who we used to think we were. So peaceful, we're calm, we're open and free, and then something gets triggered from some old memory or some energies that are stuck in the system still. And somehow we don't seem to be able to have access to that deeper recognition of truth in that moment. So some contemplation, some questioning. What is this story here that I'm looking at? Just helps us come back out to realize we're watching that. So usually it's like rowing a boat with two oars, seeing who I am on one side, even clearer, ever more clearly, that it's not suffering, it's never been a person, it's never unworthy, it's never unsafe. And then on the other side, with the other oar, seeing who I'm not, even clearer, getting some, which are really the same thing, but it's always a kind of a both of those going on, right? Because theoretically, we should be able to just go, well, that's not true, once we've seen the truth. But in that moment, when there's so much emotion and so much stuff going on, Sometimes it's helpful just to do a little contemplation, looking into this. What's the emotion that's going on here, and what's the story underneath that emotion? It just helps us to come out of it.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying take it when you're conscious of it actually happening right now, and ask yourself who are you in this? Really, who are you?
Yeah.
True self.
Is this
So
really
it's not a
is the most direct way, right? But we can't always go straight to that if there's a lot of fear or shame or something.
what's real.
Mm.
So you don't worry about subconscious stuff that's in there, like from years
Subconscious is
ago.
we're living it. We're living our subconscious stuff, right? Right now, it might be something we experienced when we were 3 years old, but it's the same story playing out in more adult ways in our life. The same basic. All we ever really suffering from are unexamined assumptions. So we come into this
Okay.
lifetime with the idea that we're not safe, that we're not lovable, and other stories. And those just keep playing out as our experience. As a child, it might be, I lost sight of my parents in the playground and I really felt terrible. As an adult, it might be, I don't have enough money to pay my bills, but it's still the same basic story, I'm not safe. And the idea underneath the emotion is subconscious. We're not aware that we think we're not safe. We're just feeling a lot of fear, as an example. You know, we don't feel good enough. We aren't thinking I'm not good enough. We're just feeling a tremendous amount of shame or guilt or something, right? So just looking at the emotion and then stripping it back to the basic story underneath and asking consistently, patiently, is that actually true that I'm not safe? It felt very true. And we've experienced it 100 million, billion, trillion times. But it's the same basic thread that runs through all of our trauma, isn't it? I've only ever found 3 basic ideas. I can't get what I want. I'm not good enough, and I'm not safe. That was everything I was ever suffering from, one of those 3 ideas. And then I just realized I can either subscribe to that or I can question if it's actually true. We know from that real place it's not true, but we're just allowing those energies to disentangle themselves. All the energies being invested in that over the years.
Yeah, I think I just saw a video that you had about those 3 questions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over that again.
I'm
Those
pretty
are
much
good.
always banging on about questioning because it's the quick
Yeah,
out of suffering when we're stuck back in that, you know, it's a way back into the openness of the real self.
lovely. I'm excited. I just kind of just stumbled on you, but what you've been doing and has been pretty profound.
Thank you. I'm glad it's helpful. I was just always looking for the shortcuts in my awakening, right? What's the fastest way out of trouble in the spiritual SOS? Like help. And everything I'm teaching is from my own experience of what really actually worked in those horrible moments, you know. So yeah, glad it's helpful.
Wow, thank you. Thanks for doing the work. Well, I got to do the work for me, but
Well, it's
thanks
just
for
my
doing.
awakening continuing in this body, right? Just more and more bodies. It's all good stuff. Yeah. Nice to meet you and
Thank
talk
you.
to you. Wonderful.
You too. Hope to see you again.
Thank you. Okay, so that is a wonderful place to leave it for this evening. Thank you all for the questions you sent in and for the questions you've asked today. I think it's fairly obvious that we're all doing the best that we can. And if it's not obvious, I'm going to say it again. You're doing the best that you can. This is not easy, but it is worthwhile. And after you've come out the other side of this, you would pay the same price 100-fold. If my awakening had cost me 100 times as much suffering as it did, I would still pay it gladly. Because once you're out of it, you can never suffer again. Never. So last thing I want to say is that if you have the desire for freedom, it's because it's already happening. You're not a separate being that has to make your awakening happening. The very desire for freedom and liberation is evidence that it's already unfolding and cannot be stopped. So I want to just say that because that was a lifesaver for me when I realized it too. So thank you. Namaste.